The training range at Fort Orion shimmered with light from the transparent roof above, a sleek hybrid of alien glass and human steel. The air thrummed with quiet precision, machines humming, sensors tracking, distant wind cutting across the outdoor lanes. At the heart of it all stood Cadet Lila Carver, a 17-year-old human whose uniform seemed almost too large for her, but whose steady eyes betrayed no trace of hesitation. She lay prone on the firing bench, her hands gripping the black and blue rifle she had built from spare parts, stubbornness, and instinct. The weapon glowed faintly along its etched channels, her blend of Earth engineering and alien circuitry. To her, it was perfect. To the aliens observing her, it was a curiosity. Behind her, 3 tall blue figures murmured among themselves in clipped tones. Their armor pulsed with light at each syllable, translating emotions human ears could barely catch. They were the Zyrix, Earth's first interstellar allies, soldiers who prided themselves on unity and precision. Their rifles were identical, their postures identical, their expressions unreadable. They stood behind sleek holographic consoles, exchanging quiet data on the strange human lying before them. One of them tilted his head, a subtle sneer curling through the modulation of his voice. Manual targeting? Antiquated, another replied. Humans persist in embracing chaos. Their voices carried just enough for Lila to hear. She didn't look up. The door hissed open behind them, and the atmosphere shifted. Commander Raxith entered, towering, broad-shouldered, his armor marked with lines of light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Unlike the others, his expression wasn't disdain, but something more complex, measured curiosity. His presence silenced the Zyrix officers immediately. Lila could feel his gaze settle on her, analytical and heavy. He moved closer, his metallic boots clicking softly against the composite floor. "Cadet Carver," he said, his voice low but resonant. "You were assigned to me for precision testing." "Yes, Commander," she answered without raising her head. He circled around her setup, studying the weapon she had modified beyond regulation standards. The barrel was longer, hand-machined for balance. The recoil pad was improvised from synthetic fibers cut from an old flight suit. The scope was patched together from alien, lensing tech scavenged from training debris. Every part of it told a story of human stubbornness and ingenuity. Rexith stopped beside her and rested one clawed hand lightly on the table. "You built this yourself?" "Yes," she said. "It performs better than standard issue." He tapped the glowing edge of the weapon. "Performance is measurable. Confidence is not." A faint smile crossed her lips. "Then I guess we'll see which one matters more." The Zyrix soldiers shifted uneasily. Rexith studied her a moment longer, then gestured toward the outdoor field beyond the glass. Rows of targets waited, perfect circles lined up against the bright green range. "You'll demonstrate during today's joint trials," he said. "Our marksmen will shoot beside you. A simple exercise." Lila caught the tone beneath his words. A test, not only of skill, but of pride. She exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. The Zyrix had been mocking human improvisation since the Alliance began, calling it undisciplined. To them, human innovation was a flaw disguised as creativity. She wanted to prove them wrong, not through anger, but through precision. Rexith moved closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Your people value instinct. We value control. Today, I'll see if the two can coexist." Lila finally looked up, meeting his glowing yellow eyes. "They can," she said. "They have to." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The hum of the range filled the silence. Then Rexith straightened, addressing the room. "Prepare for calibration," he commanded. The Zyrix obeyed immediately, adjusting systems and syncing their armor displays. Lila rose to her knees, checked the rifle's charge, and felt the familiar calm settle in. The silence before a shot. When she lay back down, her focus sharpened to a single point downrange. Rexith lingered behind her, watching with that same unreadable curiosity. His voice came again, low and deliberate. "Remember, Cadet," he said. They laugh now because they don't understand you. Make sure they remember why humans never miss twice. Her finger brushed the trigger guard. The targets glinted in the distance. And in that fragile moment of stillness, Lila Carver decided she would make the galaxy stop laughing. The morning drills began with a crisp mechanical chime, and the range shifted seamlessly into motion as if the entire facility inhaled at once. Lila settled into position again, her cheek pressed to the rifle's custom stock, while the Zyrix marksmen aligned themselves at neighboring stations. Their weapons hummed with a controlled internal rhythm, a soft synchronization that echoed the unity of their species. Lila felt the contrast immediately. Her rifle pulsed with irregular energy, a living mix of human improvisation and borrowed alien tech. It wasn't elegant, but it was hers, and she trusted every bolt, every weld, every tiny imperfection. The first target drifted laterally across the far field, its motion slow and predictable. The Zyrix fired in rapid succession, their shots threading into tight clusters of holes. Their armor glowed faintly with synchronized pulses, each flash indicating data exchange and internal recalibration. Lila waited, counting breaths, measuring the wind off the tree line. She squeezed the trigger, sending a round that sliced through the exact edge point she intended. It wasn't showy, but Raxith gave a slight nod behind her, as if confirming something he had already suspected. The second drill intensified. Targets accelerated, weaving unpredictable patterns along the horizon. The Zyrix handled the change with technical grace, their AI-assisted scopes projecting trajectories on translucent overlays. They were efficient, but their confidence swelled into something smug, and Lila could feel their attention drifting from their tasks to her every movement. One soldier allowed a faint chuckle to escape, directed at the way she manually adjusted her windage dial rather than relying on digital correction. Human stubbornness, he muttered. Raxith glanced sharply toward him. The soldier stiffened, but he didn't retract the statement. Lila heard it, and though she kept her breathing even, the comment ignited a quiet resolve inside her chest. She focused harder, letting the rhythmic thrum of her pulse guide her. She fired again, her shot threading the narrow gap between two fast-moving targets. A technical hit, subtle yet intentional. Raxith stepped slightly closer, his massive form casting a long shadow across her station. "Your calculations are quick," he murmured, audible only to her. "You do not pause as others do." "It's instinct," she whispered back. "It helps when there isn't time for anything else." His gaze lingered on her profile, as if measuring the truth behind her statement. Then he turned toward the Zyrix marksman. "Proceed to stage 3. A new sequence initiated. Crosswinds rose, swirling through the range with a turbulent unpredictability that made even the Zyrix hesitate. Their armor lights flickered uneasily as their internal systems struggled to compensate for the erratic movement. Lila felt the wind shift against her skin, a living, breathing force she'd learned to read in ways no algorithm could mimic. She exhaled slowly, grounding herself. The aliens launched their shots first, but their rounds scattered wider than before. Several impacts landed cleanly, but their patterns lacked the crystalline precision they prided themselves on. One soldier, frustrated, recalibrated his weapon with urgent taps. Raxith observed impassively before turning to Lila. "The conditions are unstable. You may wait for recalibration." She shook her head. "No need." He raised a brow. "Even your species cannot disregard physics." "I'm not disregarding anything," she said. "I'm using it." She leaned into the rifle, letting the wind push against her hair, her uniform, her breath. She fired a single shot. The bullet curved with a gust, arcing precisely into the center ring of the target as though drawn by invisible line. The range fell silent. Shock spread across the Zyrix ranks, subtle but unmistakable. Their expressions, normally stoic, flickered with a mix of disbelief and grudging admiration. Lila didn't gloat, but the satisfaction warmed her chest. Raxith stepped forward, his voice calm, yet edged with something almost like pride. You adapt faster than my algorithms predict, he said. Faster than they are comfortable admitting. Lila lifted her head slightly. That's the thing about humans, she replied. We don't always make sense until we need to. Raxith looked downrange, then back at her. Good, because the trials are not finished, and what comes next will challenge more than skill. His words hung in the air, charged with intent, promising that the next phase would carry consequences far beyond the firing range. Lila steadied her breathing as the next sequence activated, the targets shifting into a complex choreography of angular sweeps and staggered accelerations. The earlier drills had been designed to rattle her confidence, but now the Zyrix seemed unsettled, their immaculate performance disrupted by the unexpected volatility of the wind and the human cadet's ability to adapt. Their armor lights flickered with unresolved calculations, soft pulses of frustration that Lila had learned to interpret as clearly as any human sigh. She watched them with a mixture of sympathy and determination. She didn't wish to humiliate them, only to prove that their rigid certainty wasn't the only path to mastery. Raxith remained at her side, silent but alert, his glowing eyes darting between the targets and the data streams reflected across the glass panels. His presence had shifted since the start of the trials. Where he had once assessed her with cold calculation, he now observed her with something closer to guarded curiosity. Lila sensed he was recalibrating not just his expectations, but his understanding of human instinct. The change was subtle but unmistakable. When her turn came again, she adjusted the rifle with deliberate care. The Zyrix marksmen paused their own calibrations, some pretending not to watch her, while others stared openly. Lila ignored the scrutiny and focused on the farthest target, a slim black disc weaving erratically along a nearly invisible wire. She fired once, the round landing dead center with a satisfying metallic chime. The Zyrix's armor lights dimmed in disbelief, their collective silence louder than any insult they had whispered earlier. One of the alien soldiers stepped forward, agitation rippling through his posture. Her readings defy consistency, he insisted, tapping angrily at his wrist console. There is no predictive pattern. Raxith responded with a low growl, the Zyrix equivalent of a warning. Not all precision is born of uniformity, he said. Some arises from adaptability. The soldier hesitated and used to being corrected. Lila met his gaze briefly, offering neither triumph nor apology, just acknowledgement. She understood the sting of realizing you had underestimated someone, and she sensed that this moment marked the beginning of a shift, not just in their attitudes toward her, but in the delicate balance of cooperation between their two species. Raxith signaled for the final round of drills. This time, both species were required to shoot without digital overlays or stabilizing algorithms. The Zyrix reluctantly complied, their suits dimming as systems deactivated. They approached the task with rigid concentration, fingers tightening on their rifles with unfamiliar uncertainty. Lila recognized their tension and felt a flicker of empathy. They were being forced out of the comfort of absolute control, something every human learned early and every Zyrix rarely faced. One by one, the aliens fired. Their shots varied wider than before, some landing close to the center, others straying embarrassingly wide. A few hardened their expressions, masking discomfort with cold indifference. Raxith watched them without judgment. When they finished, he turned to Lila. She inhaled, exhaled, and repeated the shot pattern with unwavering calm. Each bullet traced the precise path she intended, landing near perfectly despite the unpredictable winds. When the final shot rang out, silence enveloped the range once more. Raxith stepped beside her, his voice low enough that only she could hear. You force them to confront what they fear, he said, the limits of their own understanding. Lila wasn't sure if he meant it as praise or warning, but she nodded anyway. She sensed the tension thickening among the Zyrix ranks. Their pride had been bruised, and pride, she knew, was a dangerous fault line. Before she could respond, an alarm pulsed across the room, sharp, insistent, and unmistakably unauthorized. Raxith's eyes narrowed, and several Zyrix recoiled in surprise. Something had disrupted the range's automated systems, a glitch too irregular to be accidental. Rexith moved swiftly toward the consoles, his demeanor shifting into one of controlled urgency. "This is interference," he said. "Deliberate." Lila rose to her feet, adrenaline spiking. Whatever had been awakened in the machinery wasn't part of the trials. And in the charged silence that followed, she realized the true test had only just begun. The alarm's piercing rhythm cut through the range like a blade, silencing every murmur and halting every movement. Raxith's posture stiffened as streams of red data flashed across the consoles, reflecting in sharp lines along his armor. Lila stepped beside him, instinctively steadying her breathing the way she did before a difficult shot. Even without reading the alien glyphs dancing across the screens, she sensed the disruption was neither random nor benign. The Zyrix officers clustered around Rexith, their expressions tightening with restrained agitation, but Lila caught something deeper beneath their rigid composure. Fear, or perhaps shame. Rexith reviewed the incoming diagnostics with swift motions, his claws gliding over holographic panels. "Someone tampered with the target actuators," he said. "They corrupted the calibration cycle to fail mid-trial." His voice carried no confusion, only controlled fury. "This is the work of dissenters." Lila absorbed the words slowly. She had known of tension within the Alliance, but she had believed it to be political, distant, not something that would manifest in sabotage during a controlled training session. She glanced at the Zyrix soldiers, noticing small shifts in their posture as guilt rippled through the group. Not guilt for committing the act, but for recognizing the ideology behind it. "Where did they access the system?" she asked. Rexith pointed toward the distant perimeter visible through the transparent wall, where a faint shimmer of distortion marked an unauthorized breach. "They escaped the moment the interference triggered." Without waiting for an order, Lila retrieved her rifle, sliding in a fresh magazine. The Zyrix soldiers reacted with surprise, but Rexith held up a hand, silencing their objections. "She sees what you do not," he said. "That this moment demands action, not debate." Lila moved toward the outdoor exit, her boots striking the metal walkway with purposeful rhythm. Rexith followed, his heavy steps echoing behind her. The wind outside carried the scent of damp earth and the faint mechanical tang of the sabotage systems. She swept her gaze across the open field, scanning for anything out of place. Rexith gestured toward the tree line bordering the range. "The saboteur attempted to mask his trail," he said, lowering his voice. "But Zyrix technology cannot fully conceal displacement from human eyes." His tone held a rare note of admiration. Lila spotted it then, a subtle break in the grass, a faint irregularity that sensors might overlook but a trained eye could identify. She followed the trail with cautious steps. Ahead, a small clearing opened, where the hum of an activating engine vibrated faintly through the soil. The saboteur's compact dropship shimmered into view as its cloaking field destabilized. Rexith's expression hardened. He intends to flee to off-grid territory. If he escapes, Alliance Command will perceive this as coordinated rebellion, not isolated disobedience. The stakes crystallized in Lila's mind. One saboteur could fracture the already delicate relationship between humans and Zyrix. There would be political consequences far beyond the range, consequences that could collapse the joint program entirely. The dropship lifted 2 meters off the ground, its propulsion system whining under strain. Lila fell to her knee, bracing her rifle against a boulder. She didn't need Rexith to tell her what had to be done. The ship's engine core was small, shielded, and vibrating with unstable energy, nearly impossible to disable without triggering a catastrophic reaction. But there was one vulnerable point, a narrow actuator exposed during upward thrust. Rexith knelt beside her, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is no trial. A miscalculation could kill him. But if he escapes, he endangers us all." Lila swallowed hard, her heartbeat loud but steady. "Then I'll aim small." She exhaled slowly, letting the chaos around her fade into stillness. Through the scope, the actuator trembled with the dropship strain. The wind gusted unpredictably, but she read its movement with instinctive certainty. The moment sharpened to a single fragile thread. She squeezed the trigger. The round streaked across the clearing, curving with the wind's final breath. It struck the actuator precisely, sending a controlled jolt through the ship's frame. The engines sputtered, coughing out energy, and the dropship lurched sideways before collapsing harmlessly into the grass. Silence followed, broken only by the soft hiss of steam escaping from the damaged engine. Rexith stared at her, not with surprise, but with the solemn recognition of a truth confirmed. "You have shown them," he said quietly, "and now they must decide what to learn from you." Lila lowered her rifle, her breath shaking slightly as the weight of what she'd done settled over her. The saboteur stumbled out of the disabled ship, defeated but alive. Zyrix soldiers rushed past to apprehend him, their earlier disdain replaced by something closer to reverence. Rexith stood, extending a hand to help her rise. "This alliance will survive because of moments like this," he said. "Because of those willing to act when others hesitate." Lila accepted the hand, feeling the gravity of his words anchor her firmly in place. She didn't smile, but her eyes carried a quiet fire. The trials were over, but the real work, uniting two worlds, had only just begun.